Preparations are underway in Moscow as Russia prepares to formally annex Ukrainian territory. President Volodymyr Zelensky makes an impassioned plea to its citizens. A new study shows 47% of Russians feel anxiety over recent mobilization, despite the nation's self-proclaimed triumphs in Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities claim to uncover 18 torture chambers in the deoccupied city of Vovchansk as Russia intensifies shelling elsewhere. Russian President Vladimir Putin is taking the final steps to formally annex 4 Ukrainian regions, as an unnerving security presence builds around the Grand Kremlin Palace in Moscow for the lavish ceremony to follow. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made an impassioned address to the Russians who will be watching.
Everyone in the world understands well what such an attempt at annexation would actually mean. It will not mean what the Kremlin hopes for. But to stop this, you, the citizens of Russia, will have to stop the one in Russia who wants war more than life, your life. Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Kyiv and its international allies have dismissed the so-called referendum. The US president promising new harsher sanctions on Russia.
The United States will never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory. This so-called referendum was a sham, an absolute sham. The results were manufactured in Moscow.
The Russian-installed leaders of the 4 areas have touched down in Moscow after Putin declared what he called independence of Zaporizhia and Kherson late Thursday.
We congratulate all Russian people around the world on this great celebration. We did it. Kherson region, Zaporizhia region, Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics will now forever become Russia.
The UN Security Council, where Russia has a veto, is due to meet later today. The US and Albania are drafting a resolution to condemn the annexation. As Russia prepares to formally proclaim the annexation of Ukrainian territory, a new study shows anxiety among citizens over the recent mobilization, despite these so-called triumphs. Think tank Levada Center says 47% of Russians feel anxious about the draft, and President Vladimir Putin has admitted there have been problems.
Many questions have arisen during this mobilization, and these mistakes need to be corrected and avoided in future. Mistakes in mobilizing those citizens who can defer, for example, fathers who have lots of children, people who are suffering from chronic diseases, or those who are not in the accepted age range. It's necessary to deal with each case individually, and if we have made this mistake, I repeat, we need to correct it and bring back home those who have been drafted contrary to the mobilization requirements.
Testimonies have revealed that authorities are reportedly asking reservists to bring all their own equipment, from helmets to bulletproof vests. These stores are now overflowing with customers, and stock is quickly depleting. Others have been less enthusiastic. Despite recent protests at the Russia-Georgia border calling on Tbilisi to stop the influx of Russians, huge queues, mostly of military-aged men, continue to form. Georgian authorities are delivering water and blankets to those who will be spending the next few nights on the road. This is just one of 18 torture chambers Ukrainian forces say they have uncovered as they reclaim territory from Russia. In Vovchansk, police point to inscriptions on the walls by prisoners, and instruments they believed used for electric shocks. Various sources say Ukrainians have secured both banks of Kupiansk, which could mean the imminent recapture of the strategic town of Lyman. This is all that remains of homes in Dnipro, where Russian troops have been intensifying their attacks. Dozens of kilometers from the front line, 2 children have been killed. They were aged just 8 and 12, this woman says. The whole family was already having a hard time because their grandparents and son were recently killed. She continues, "It is scary and sad that civilians are killed in such a way." The scars of destruction remain in the Kharkiv region, previously battered by Russian shelling. While there were signs of a hasty withdrawal after a successful Ukrainian counter-offensive, the fear does not escape those cities closest to the border, especially after Russia escalated its use of Iranian-supplied kamikaze drones.
Dancing to the beats of their homeland, in Portugal, but with an eye on this Sunday's Brazilian presidential elections as well. These Brazilian expats who've come to the city of Braga in search of a better life wonder if issues like the threat of violence that pushed them out will finally be fixed.
We've seen mostly families arriving here over the last couple of years, looking for quality of life, good education, health and ease of language.
The municipality of Braga turned out to be an El Dorado. It is now home to almost 13,000 Brazilians, so much so it has been labelled as Brazil. Among them is Maria, who came to Braga 6 years ago and set up a cheese business. She's also closely watching the outcome of this weekend's election race.
Nowadays, Brazilians face financial issues. The issue with employment. Our wish is that regardless of who wins, they work for Brazilians so that they can have the desire to stay and not the unbridled desire to go in search of something better.
The number of Brazilians leaving, including to Portugal, peaked during President Jair Bolsonaro's government. But
On the one hand, during the current Bolsonaro administration, there might be an exodus of those who mostly oppose his vision. On the other hand, there might also be a change in power in Brazil, who will lead other people to leave.
Incumbent Jair Bolsonaro or challenger Lula da Silva. One of them will be elected president of Brazil. Meanwhile, back at home with Maria, she hopes the elections could be a turning point for her country.
I hope to see a better Brazil, a Brazil that gives better expectations to Brazilians so that they are proud of the country, proud of being Brazilians. It was one of the most talked about productions at the last Cannes Film Festival and won the prestigious Jury Prize. EO is the latest picture by the 84-year-old Polish film master Jerzy Skolimowski. A shocking film about animal cruelty seen through the eyes of a mule. EO is the movie's main character. His fate represents the lives of millions of animals, and this is what pushed the filmmaker to create this story.
I have a message to pass to people. It's a message about our treatment of animals. Humans generally have a wrong attitude to animals. They are very kind to the home pets, but generally speaking, we treat animals as objects, not as living creatures.
The film is a co-production between Poland and Italy, where EO will end his journey after crossing Central Europe and the Alps. But the question is, does EO escape his fate and end up in the slaughterhouse like millions of animals every year?
I still feel guilty that I wasn't able to become the full vegan. I still eat a little bit of meat, but I cut it off 2/3 at least. And if this film would make this appeal to people, maybe if we all start to eat less meat, then the torturing animals wouldn't be necessary. I keep my fingers crossed that this film is being seen by quite many people to really appeal to their hearts for the better treatment of animals. Let's be good to our small brothers.
EO will be released in Poland at the end of September and will feature in cinemas across the European continent this autumn. The film has also been nominated for an Oscar next year and is in the International Feature category.